going to look at Romans 8:28, the latter part of that verse. And those of us who are familiar, very familiar passage of scripture, and it says, "For we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose." And that's the part we're going to look at tonight. We're going to look at his purpose. We're going to look at purpose from the viewpoint of God, not the viewpoint of us. Because one of the things that we are wrestling with in the 21st century church is understanding purpose. Understanding what it is that God wants from us. That word purpose in the original Greek means deliberate intent. So what it's saying is that we are called for God's deliberate intent. God's deliberate intent. Not our deliberate intent, but God's deliberate intent. If we could grasp that, then we would understand why we have been thrust into the processes that we've been thrust into. To understand your process means to understand your purpose. We wrestle with our process because we are ignorant to our purpose. We believe God has called us to one thing, and God has actually called us to something else. And we don't understand the something else because we're so busy trying to tell God what he called us to. Come on, somebody. We want to go to these places that are familiar to us. We want to go to these places that are comfortable to us. And God is a God that has a plethora of callings in him. Yeah. God does not call everybody to the pulpit, but God calls everybody. Come on, somebody. There are people right now who have missed their purpose because they're functioning in an area where God never purposed for them to be. That was not his intent. There are people who are in pulpits trying to minister, trying to pastor, and that was not God's intent for them. Come on now. I know that's hard to hear. But it's away with this thought that because I heard God call my name, he must want me to preach. God calls people to lots of things. And the purpose that he calls you to, he tailor makes your process for it. There are things you're going through right now. It's for the purpose that God intended. Come on, somebody. And one of the reasons why it seems so hard, the process seems so hard, is because you can't understand why you got to go through this right here to get over here where you think you're going. Come on, somebody. Come on, somebody. One of the things that God spoke to me today about process is supposed to show, is supposed to condition you. In other words, when you go through the process, it puts you in a disciplined place. If you understand your purpose, then you understand what God is doing when he puts you through certain things. Everything God puts you through has a purpose, has a reason, has an intent. Come on, somebody. And if you understand that purpose, if you understand that reason, if you understand that intent, then it would cause us to rejoice about our process rather than cuss at it. Come on, somebody. Come on, somebody. We're cussing at our process because we don't understand where it is God's taking us. Let's just be honest. We don't know. We don't know. God has so many different kinds of ministers. Not all of them supposed to be in the pulpit. Come on, somebody. God has ministers that he's calling that never will be anybody's pastor. But they'll be great ministers if they ever find out their purpose. Come on now. God has ministers that he will anoint to minister in the capacity of business. Come on, somebody. They will never be anybody's pastor, but they'll do great works in the area of business.
Yes. Yes.
God has ministers, come on now, who will be great ministers in the area of writing. They will never be anybody's quote-unquote pastor, but they'll be great ministers because they'll write a word that will enlighten God's people.
Yeah.
Come on now.
Right.
And so with each of these intent, these and others, God tailor makes a purpose for us. And we have to be conditioned.
That's true.
Yeah. It would be easy to understand why we would be frustrated if we felt like God was taking us over here when actually God was taking us over here.
Yeah.
We're working to get over here.
Yeah.
Come on now.
All right.
And God is working to get you over here. God needs somebody in every area of life.
Yes.
God needs ministers that got law degrees.
Yeah.
God needs ministers that's got PhDs and they're not theology.
Yeah.
Come on, somebody.
All right.
God needs ministers that are MDs.
Yes.
Come on now.
Yeah.
He needs people in every walk of life. And so if God has intended to call you to a certain area, the thing we have to understand is, God, what is the area you call me to?
Yeah.
I've shared this before. My mentor gave us a parable. And she said, suppose I said to you, I want you to go to the store, and I take off running. And she asked, what's wrong with that picture? And the first thing that I noticed that I said was, well, I don't know what you want. I didn't get any money to go. I don't know where you want me to go. And we sort of laughed. And she said, you're laughing, but people do God like that every day. They hear him call them, and they figure, they grab their Bible, put a big old cross around their neck, and here they go. Without finding out what God's deliberate intent was for their life.
All right.
Come on up in here, somebody.
Yes.
Yeah. God puts us through processes that's taking us to our intended destination, where he intends for us to be. He's going to process us according to his intent.
Yes.
So your what you're calling a hardship, God is calling a blessing. Come on, somebody.
Okay.
What you call a curse, God is calling it a blessing.
Okay.
Because you don't understand your intents, your intended destination.
Okay.
Come on up in here, somebody. The next thing our process is supposed to do is transform us.
Okay.
It's supposed to change us. Make us ready for that deliberate intent of God.
Yeah.
Put us in a position where we can function according to that.
Yeah.
Put us in a position. Listen, the first thing, he has to put us in a position so we can think like where he's taking us. We don't think like God wants us to think many times. We think one-dimensional. God wants us to broaden our horizon. Think according to that purpose that he's intending us to think. We don't know how to do that unless we go through the process that God said for his purpose.
Yes.
So everything he puts us through, it's supposed to transform us.
Yeah.
That's why he said, count it all joy. When you go through these diverse temptations, meaning you're going to go through a lot. Knowing this, that the trying of your faith does what? Work in patience. And then he said, let patience have its perfect work. That you can be perfect and entire, want nothing. Or wanting means lacking nothing. If we follow God's intent, he will take us in a way where we won't be lacking anything. And I'm not necessarily talking about physical lack. I'm talking about physical and spiritual lack.
Okay.
Come on, somebody. Come on, somebody. These are the thoughts God wanted me to share with you today. Not only that, the last thing, our process should give us wisdom.
Yes.
I end on wisdom. Our process, we're supposed to gain some knowledge. supposed to learn something.
Yes.
Come on up in here, somebody.
Yes.
Things that you're calling a failure, God is calling a learning experience.
Yeah. Okay. Come on.
We think we're failing.
Mm-hmm.
God saying, no, you're learning.
Yeah.
And I need for you to learn. I'm taking you through a process that's going to teach you something.
All right.
Yeah. For those who didn't know, I don't think I've ever shared before, but I spent some time as a homeless person.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt very low. I'm laying in that cot, feeling like, God, where you at?
Yes.
I'm your girl.
Yeah.
We down. I don't understand why I'm laying over here.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting laying there feeling like a failure. And God says to me, but you're soaring. And I'm trying to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
How am I soaring, God?
Yeah.
I figured not only I didn't even land, I crash landed. Come on now. Ain't nothing about this feeling like success.
Yeah.
Ain't nothing about this feeling good.
Yes.
Come on now. I'm embarrassed.
Yeah.
That's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling like I'm worthless. I'm feeling like I'm worthless. And yet God says, but now you're soaring. And he said, and he explained to me why. He said, because now you're in a position where you'll listen to me.
All right.
Come on up. And like I said, God will process us so that we can get to what he intended for us to be.
Yeah.
The strange thing that God did was while I was at the homeless shelter, he had me go buy composition books and write down business plans.
Mm-hmm.
Not memoirs, business plans.
All right.
And I'm laying there saying, God, how could you have me write business plans and I can't even buy a house in the hood? I can't even rent an apartment with roaches and rats in it. Come on, somebody. My point is this. Going through homelessness conditioned me.
Yes.
I realized how much I could actually bear.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yes.
And I realized that God was taking me through a process where I had to learn how to bear much.
Yeah. Yeah.
I learned a lot.
Yes.
Come on now.
Yes.
So my process took me in a way where I learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And God knows it changed me, it transformed me.
Yes.
My mind renewed.
Yeah.
My outlook changed.
Yeah.
And it changed me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm continuing to transform because of that experience.
All right.
That was one of the best experiences in my life.
Wow.
With all I was feeling when I was going through it.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the best. It helped to launch me
Yeah.
to where I am now.
Uh-huh.
I'm closing with this thought.
Mm-hmm.
As you go through what you're going through, regardless of what it is, and regardless of how difficult it is, ask yourself or ask God, God, show me your deliberate intent for me.
All right.
Show me how this is working for my good, because it is.
All right.
God is doing something in your life, and you will be glad when you realize what it is. God bless you, and we'll see you next week.